offering new life to all around us. Amen. I wonder if there are any children here today who'd like to come and chat with me at the front. What do you got there, Elise? Elise found a copy of the New Testament, New Testament with illustrations or something, with pictures, before the service, and I told her that she better read up on that because there'll be a test. Are you ready? No, I'm just kidding. I was just kidding. I don't want to make a practice of this, but 2 weeks ago I had a rock. Do you remember I had a rock a couple of weeks ago? I was talking about Stony Heart. Actually, now that I think about it, it is a continuation of that, isn't it really? Did you know, well, let me ask you this question. Do you think everybody loved Jesus when they first met Jesus? How come? Because they didn't know him. You guys are way too smart. You jump right to the end. Yes, you're absolutely right. I think that's why, is because they didn't really know him. But they could have got to know him. He traveled around a lot, and we got lots of stories and stuff. Why do you think people didn't want to get to know him? Anybody? Anybody just throw out an answer? Because he was a stranger? Or because he was strange? I think it's both, really. But yeah, because he was a stranger, right? We're not really often really good with strangers. And he said stuff, right? He said stuff that sounded really good, but then when you tried to do it, it was kind of hard, first of all. And then do you think there were people who were probably thinking that maybe Jesus, what he was suggesting wasn't really good for them because they'd somehow have to give up something? Say, their power, their authority, or something like that? Maybe? Do you think there was maybe some people who didn't like his beard? Yeah, probably. Yeah, there was probably people who looked at Jesus and went, I don't know. There were certainly people who, in fact, there's a story about Jesus in his hometown going to preach at the local synagogue. And at first everyone thought, this is really great. He's really impressive. I love what he's saying. But then somebody went, yeah, but you know what? He's just the son of that carpenter who lived down the street here. He's a nobody. And then everybody suddenly thought, hey, who do you think you are telling us stuff? Right? Because we have an idea. We think people who know stuff ought to know stuff. And people who ought not to know stuff don't know. Wait. Yeah, you know what I mean. Right? Because that's the other thing. The other thing I said before the service was that not only did they need to read up on that because it would be a test, was that I was just joking about that because what I really need is their wisdom. And what's the first thing I hear? Your wisdom, right? Yeah. Why do you think some people didn't like Jesus? No, they didn't, because they didn't know him. And that's the tricky part, isn't it? Getting to know people. But even the people who say might have wanted to throw stones at Jesus, metaphorically and otherwise, by the way, even the people who wanted to throw stones at Jesus, how do you think Jesus replied to that? What do you think he did about that? Do you think he called together his gang of disciples and went and beat people up? No. Do you think, he called the authorities? No? What do you think he did? Do you think he loved people? Instead, when people were mad at him or said nasty things to him and stuff, or say wanted to throw rocks at him, I think Jesus just tried to love them even more, which probably, for some of them, made them madder. But then I think eventually maybe they thought about it. Maybe they thought about it a bit and realized that Jesus was just trying to love them. Do you think maybe? Some of them? One or two? 1 or 2? Yeah. It's going to be next week's going to be really interesting because it's Palm Sunday next week, and which is a big celebration day. And then by the end of that week, everybody who is celebrating with Jesus didn't want to celebrate with Jesus. Quite the opposite, in fact. So it's a really interesting time, and we'll talk about that lots next week. But I think it's a really important thing to remember that when Jesus was saying all these loving things and all these wonderful things that we sit around and talk about and say, well, isn't that awesome and everything, that there were people who didn't want to hear that. There's still lots of people who don't want to hear that. But Jesus just loved them even more. And I bet he didn't even throw stones at them or anything. In fact, the more people he loved, the more they probably shared love too. And imagine if everybody just did that. We wouldn't be throwing any stones. Would you like this one?